Bitches are expiring again.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Who Pushed Helen, a deep dive into Big Brother lore. I'm your host, Emily.
And I'm your host, Sam.
And we're going to pick up kind of where we left off on our last episode, talking through weeks 4 on through Big Brother 2, kind of jumping back in at the midway point of the season.
Yeah, and what a midpoint it is. I feel like this is where we really start to see them figure out the game and like what needs to start happening, how to strategize, and how to also like add in your social game. Because at this point, we're seeing a lot of people's social games just like plummet.
Started out fine and then didn't end well for them.
Yeah, no, it didn't. They were a very big, happy family at the beginning of the season, but these next few weeks is not promising for their relationships.
For sure.
Before we get started, I was doing a little bit of research today into Big Brother 2 live feeds because you cannot get them. Like, you cannot get the actual recorded footage. So everything I'm saying is secondhand from things I've read. But apparently, the war that began between Shannon, Mike, Boogie, and Will versus the other house, as we discussed in the last episode when everyone was talking about like quitting smoking for 24 hours or like not eating for 24 hours and doing these cleanses, was actually started by production and not Dr. Will. I guess production told them if you can go 24 hours without smoking cigarettes, you can have a basketball. And the argument between Shannon and Autumn, where Shannon infamously poured the chips on Autumn's bed, was because Autumn smoked a cigarette before that 24 hours was over.
Oh my gosh. That
and
makes a lot more sense.
Right. And so Chilltown decided that anyone who couldn't follow those very basic instructions were weak and stupid. And that's how all of that infighting allegedly began.
Yeah, that adds so much context.
So much context. Even watching it, this is like my third or fourth time watching the season. And even now, I'm like, man, they go from like being a happy family to everyone hating the smokers and everyone hating people who are eating. And I was like, the way it's portrayed is that Dr. Will had these ideas to like, nah, man.
Which is so interesting to think about too, how early on production started manipulating. I think is too strong a word for what it ends up being in the grand scheme of Big Brother, but how early on they started kind of coaxing the story and presenting it how they wanted to, because they had no idea, how the game would work. It was the first time they were doing it like that, with the actual rules and a game being played. It's interesting to see how early on in Big Brother and the timeline of it that they started trying to manipulate and mold that into a way that the audience is seeing what they want,
Yeah, it just puts a whole new narrative on it. And I just thought that was really interesting. So I wanted to share. Again, this is like through other lines. So if the timeline's not quite accurate or that's not a fully exact thing that happened, just take it with a grain of salt. But I thought it was interesting.
For sure.
All right. So week 4 HOH is Kent. And I got to be honest, I think Kent is one of my favorite people in Big Brother 2. I think his storyline is incredible. Rest in peace. He passed away in 2017. He is the first Big Brother house guest to pass. So rest in peace.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I learned a lot today about BB2. I'm telling you. Yeah. He was the first one a former house guest to die after the show.
How old was he during the season?
Oh God. He was at least in his late 40s. I think he was in his 60s when he died, but I could be wrong. I'll fact check that later. And I'll put it in our description. So Shannon's gone. Chilltown is now just Will and Mike Boogie, and Kent is HOH. Now, we're already seeing here the Boogie that we know, right? First few weeks, Mike Boogie's like, oh my God, people are playing the game. Like, what's happening? Or like, he's crying because people left. Kent nominated him, and the fit that he threw at that table was honestly impressive.
And how quickly the attitude changes when all of a sudden it's on you.
But when he was acting out the table, I was like, oh, there you are. But my favorite thing he says to Kent is, I just want to know how you're going to go home to your daughter and say, Daddy, remember you when you won that car and everyone wanted you out, but Mike saved you? Why would you then nominate him 3 weeks later?
A chance to respond.
Actually, I'm going to speak now.
Okay.
I want to know what you're going to go home and tell your daughter when she says, Daddy, the first week when you won the car and everybody wanted you out of the house and Mike Boogie saved you, why'd you put him up for nomination 3 weeks later? How are you going to answer that question?
He was kind of cooking there, not gonna lie.
He was. That's a very far reach. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I mean, this is like a month later, Mike Boogie. Another favorite line I have of him from this week was Mike to Will. I'm a fucking star and he is a fucking extra. Talking about Kent.
So what you're saying is Mike Boogie walked so that Angela could run when she was talking about a low budget movie.
For the visitors that came to visit me last night, your performance was great. It was absolutely great for a low budget movie.
I mean, honestly, like I feel like Mike Boogie's week in BB2 was actually kind of hard to watch because literally like a housecast couldn't breathe without like Mike Boogie have big opinions about it.
Yeah.
Big opinions. But I do think that his reaction is partly what advanced Dr. Will's game so much because Dr. Will noticed how people were treating, Shannon the previous week and Mike Boogie. Because from that moment forward, he became, Dr. Will, way less outspoken, way more compliant, way calmer. And I really think that seeing Mike Boogie's demeanor is like what catapulted him into like a higher strategic playing field, if that makes sense.
And it makes sense that happened at about the midway point of the season in terms of everyone being so over Mike Boogie and the way he was acting and the energy, because the first like 3 weeks, I feel like that can still be fun. It feels like you're at summer camp, like it's all fun and games and you're just living with all these strangers for fun on TV. But then you realize how long a Big Brother season actually is and the fact that you are living with these people, 16, 12, whatever it is per season, people in super close quarters with absolutely no privacy. I think the midway point is probably where that starts to crack for a lot of people. So it makes sense.
Absolutely. And we see that with many of the house guests, like in the next coming weeks as well. So I do think you're dead on about that. And I think that's also why Will was able to, what's the word I'm looking for? Adapt in the way that he did and I think this is also kind of when he's starting to realize like never win an HOH ever. Because no matter what, you're going to be a target. No matter what, you're going to get blood on your hands. It's easier to just make a bunch of promises that you don't have to worry about breaking because you'll never have the power to break them. You know what I mean? And it is fun watching that kind of unfold during this week.
Right. The origin story of the idea of throwing comps. It's also funny, and we might have talked about this last episode, but I don't think that aspect of his game could ever be replicated because of the way that house guests now prioritize comp wins and think that is part of a resume. And it just wasn't, the game was so new. No one was thinking of it like that. And there was only the HOH. There was no veto, so it didn't matter as much. But I think you're so right that was such a pivotal part of his strategy. It makes me wonder what he would be like in modern era Big Brother when he couldn't do all of that to be part of his strategy.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I've always said that I don't think that Dr. Will would do well in modern Big Brother. I don't think it would work the same way it did before we had such an abundance of competitive reality TV. Because if you look at it, I mean, Will is definitely one of the architects of Big Brother strategy. That's undoubtable. Even if I think he might be slightly overrated, he's still worthy of like iconic status for that reason. Problem is, the playbook is written and we've all read it. So where do you go from there?
And even, obviously, it's not at all the same as Big Brother, but watching a little bit of Deal or No Deal Island this season, they could not stand him. It wasn't like evil Dr. Will, who we love to hate, and we're all going to vote for him. They wanted him gone. Could not stand to be around him. And so I think that is just an inkling into what it would look like if he was in the house in the modern era.
What's brilliant about this week of Big Brother is that Will starts to notice fractures in the tight alliances in the house and is able to capitalize on them. So, for instance, Kent goes up to Bunky and Hardy and is essentially like, we're final three. We got this. We're going to take this to the end, which I actually thought would have been a great plan for them. But Hardy was so closely aligned with Nicole that he told her. And Nicole immediately told Kent.
Yeah.
And now they're all fighting over like who said it first, who tried to make this final three. And instead of joining in on the narrative, Dr. Will basically takes Hardy and Nicole aside and is like, let's get rid of Kent, and then three of us can be a final three. And I thought that was a brilliant movement on his part because I feel like if he didn't insert himself, they would have made up. I think they would have made up in that scenario.
I agree. And I think this is where the Dr. Will that everybody praises really shines for me, and where I think that he deserves credit where credit is due, because he is the archetype also of, or he is the architect of, you need to be aware of what's going on, and you need to have self-awareness, and you need to have a gauge on what's happening at every other moment in the house, even when you're not in the room. And he, even now as a human, I think is just very, very talented and skilled at being able to read people and situations and get a vibe of things. And like the original vibe check was Dr. Will and the way he approached this type of situation. And so I think this really is where he starts to shine and where his iconic status starts to become a lot more legitimate, I think, for me.
Absolutely. One thing he's really skilled at is his timing. I think a lot of Big Brother players, their tragic flaw is they make a move too early or they make a move too late. They have the conversation too early, you know? Dr. Will was really skilled at keeping his mouth shut until he needed to open it.
Yep.
And he only opened it when he was sure it was gonna work. And that is one of the reasons I don't think his game can fully be replicated, is that he had just a very astute level of observation that most people with that level of observation fumble the bag because they want to tell everyone everything, and they want to, not Dr. Will. He really, knowing he was losing his biggest ally in the house and still being able to just start maneuvering before he's even gone is very clearly skillful. And
and
you gotta give him his
the
flowers on that one.
He figured out when to pivot when there was no precedent. Like, there was no example of a previous season of Big Brother of, oh, you should really think about pivoting, when the person that you he just had to know to do that, And I think there's a lot of people that early on that didn't, and that's what set him apart in season 2.
Yeah, I fully agree. And also, I just want to say, I hated that Mike Boogie didn't fight for himself during his week. I don't understand it. I'm a little bit confused by this Mike Boogie Krista love story that's developing this week, because just a week and a half ago he was in Autumn's bed and arguing with her over whether or not she was gonna let him sleep in bed with her. And then all of a sudden during this week it's they're these long lost loves and we're splitting them up, and everyone is sad about it. I'm so good. What are you talking about?
Sometimes I think about the Mike Boogie that we saw in Big Brother 2, and I think about how wild it is that he was even honestly asked back for All Stars. And obviously it's because of his affiliation with Will, but yeah, what he was in Big Brother and the timeline in which he was there and what he actually contributed to the game, but also entertainment. He wasn't there really for long enough, I think, to leave the kind of impact that we talk about it now as. If we were talking about the week 3 or 4 boot in a modern era of Big Brother, you're not talking about somebody who becomes an icon.
Right.
But again, that was setting the tone and the precedent, and his affiliation with Dr. Will, it makes sense why they brought him back. But just weird to look back on how important he feels when we talk about it now. But in retrospect, at the time, he was not that quintessential to the outcome of the game.
No. And when we get to the All-Star season, of course, we're going to be talking a lot more about Mike Boogie. He lasts obviously a lot longer in All-Stars. But even on All-Stars, I feel like there was a little bit more luck than it was strategy for him in a lot of ways. So I completely take back what I said last episode, where I said I think he was the strategist, because I think I spoke a little too soon. And I think I maybe forgot just the kind of moves that Dr. Will makes, because they are impressive.
I think it was a testament to what could have been in the beginning and how relationships in the house took form. And Boogie, not that I think Boogie necessarily could have become the strategic mind that Dr. Will ultimately becomes, but I think, we saw moments where Dr. Will tried to sacrifice himself on the block next to a woman that he had feelings for. Yep. Those things, I think the roles were reversed for a period of time, but it's, when you get to the midway point of the season, at what point do you rise to the challenge like Dr. Will did, or at what point do you crack like Boogie did?
Exactly. And as we know, Boogie does go home. It's not even close. They tried to do the thing that Big Brother does, where they're oh, people are going back and forth, they have no idea, but they knew. There was 0 votes for him to stay. Krista looked like an angel compared to him. There was just no chance he was staying. He dug his grave the second he lashed out immediately at everyone. But I do think that entire week catapulted Dr. Will, because from that moment on, I feel like he becomes the strongest player in the house, and no one knows it.
And that was something that Dr. Will did so well. Nobody else in the house knew it, but he knew how to work that diary room so well. Mm-hmm. And he knew how to present himself in a way that he was the narrator of the season, he couldn't possibly have known that for sure, right? You don't know how the edit is going,
Right.
but he could figure out enough by the questions they were asking him, by the tone he was setting. He knew that he was setting himself up to be the star of the season and to be the one who was expressing his thoughts in the diary room. And I think he used the DR in a way that a lot of them didn't even think of because, again, there was no precedent. On the first season, it's not like that was happening. So there was no strategy. He realized that that could be a tool for him in how his edit was going. And I think that that also has a lot to do with the legacy that we consider Dr. Will to have now, because he made sure that we saw him more than we saw everyone else.
Yeah, and for those watching and listening, something about Big Brother 2 that's very different from a lot of the seasons is that there is no jury sequester. So those who are evicted from the house get to watch the show as it goes on. So they get to see those diary rooms, and that becomes like a whole big thing in Big Brother 3, which is arguably one of my favorite seasons of Big Brother. But that is what we're talking about when we say, like, you know, when Dr. Will's starting to figure out the diary rooms, like, that's what we're talking about. He's not just speaking to America. He's also speaking to every evicted person who's been in the house.
That's so true.
And yeah, he really does figure that out a lot quicker than everyone. All right. So moving into week 5, we have Hardy's HOH. And this is the first time in the history of Big Brother that someone has won the HOH comp twice. So that is a legacy right there. This week starts off with, do you remember in old Big Brother when they used to be able to like take videos, like they would give them like a handheld camera to make like little videos for America? So they made one of the boy band 2 Hype, which is what the house guests had like named themselves. And they did a video of them dancing. And it was very cute. It was like definitely like one of those things that like is what gives Big Brother so much character, is like these little 5-minute shorts that they do. But so they let them record it, and then Big Brother edited it and then like showed it to them. And then this blew my mind. I can't believe I forgot about this. After they watched it, there was like a goodbye message from Mike Boogie to Krista. He's like crying in it, and he's like, "You make me want to be a better person. Like, you're one of the best people I've ever met." And like everyone is crying. And
I don't remember that.
Same. I also did not remember that.
I think that probably would have given me the ick so bad that I just blocked that out of my memory.
I got the ick so bad, Emily. I was like, you know what it honestly reminds me of? Another Big Brother moment that I get the ick from is Big Brother 6, when it's like America's choice on who gets to receive a phone call from their family. And Janelle wins, and she gets to talk on the phone with like that dude who got kicked out like week 1. Like,
and everyone's
like, I
asking
miss my wife, I miss my kids, I miss
but
my
also
grandparents.
Everyone's like, ask them all these serious questions, and she's like, did Brittany have a baby? Which, like, priorities? I
she ask?
She asked if Brittany had had her baby, like Britney Spears.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
That's what she used her phone call for.
Yeah, it was, you know, and maybe I'm being too judgmental because, again, I don't have the live feed. So, like, maybe he and Krista had this, like, undying romance. But the way this show was edited, they focus so much time on like the food competitions and then the luxury competitions, and then the next scene, like 2 people are madly in love, and you're like, where did we get here?
Because they didn't know how they didn't know how to do Big Brother yet either. I think is funny when you go back and look at the early seasons. They, again, and I remind people of this all the time, it's not like Survivor where you're editing the whole season knowing who the winner is. Big Brother, they're editing it in real time for 3 episodes a week as things are going on. And so not only is that the challenge of making sure you're telling the stories in a way that makes sense to the audience who isn't watching the live feeds, but they didn't even really know how the game worked yet because it was the first run through. Yep. So the idea of them having to proactively in advance edit to make the end of the game make sense when they didn't even know what the end of the game was going to look like yet, it makes sense to me why a lot of things feel choppy or not in order, because they didn't really know what they were doing yet either.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it just makes it so much, I feel like, more fun to watch like later because of like how different well, I don't know. I was going to say how different things are, but even in this most recent season of Big Brother, like the fans didn't find out about like Leah and Quinn like kind of having a thing until like weeks after we did. So I think that you're right. The editing, I think like not knowing what's going to be a big deal versus what isn't is a big part of that.
And I think, and we can talk about this in a future episode too, there are so many Big Brother winners that people who don't watch the live feeds or follow updates and only get the episodes, they're like, they're kind of a mid winner. But if you watch the live feeds, like I think Chelsea is the top 5 winner from this past season. But if you watch the season, she didn't start getting the edit of a winner until like 2 weeks left.
I know, which I knew actually when Brooklyn left the house and Chelsea was able to pivot that she was going to win Big Brother, because the winners of Big Brother have to be adaptable people. It doesn't, you can win comps, you can have a social game, but the most important thing is to be adaptable. And I think that's what Will kind of showcases in this season.
And that makes, again, I've said it already, but it makes his strategy so impressive because he was able to determine how he needed to act in the diary room when he wasn't really seeing how he was being presented. He was only making assumptions, but he was able to be adaptable enough to figure out and use that to his advantage. And so that is where I think his legacy really is legitimized for me.
For sure. So Hardy is HOH, and he's doing he cannot decide who to put up between Will, Kent, and Bunky. And he has different reasonings for all of them. But what I think is really interesting is Hardy was someone who hated Dr. Will in the beginning of this. He's like Superman. And he you saw Will as Lex Luthor, and he had to be gone. But after Will made a pact with him and Nicole, he's in this week a lot more I really like Will. I don't want Will to go home. And he was really leaning heavy towards Bunky and Kent. But the thing that Bunky said that saved him was he basically went to Hardy and was like, if I'm up, I can't vote. And I will vote however you want. I will vote
smart.
Kent. I don't give a shit. I will vote out Will. I don't care. But I thought it was interesting because I don't feel like that would work now. I don't think that justification would work. There's kind of a culture of hating floaters. And I truly believe that Bunky is the first Big Brother floater. Internally, he had his preferences on who stayed and who went. But most of the time, he voted with whomever the house was voting with. And in this case, he tells Hardy, are you worried about me winning this game? And he's like, no. And he's like, exactly.
Real. And I think to that extent, it wouldn't work anymore. But I would like to see it attempted because I feel like we don't really see a lot of, well, I will vote however you want. We get people saying next week, if I'm HOH, I'll do whatever you ask. Yeah. And I will say the one person from this past season of Big Brother 26, who I feel like could have done this and it would have worked depending on the HOH was Leah, because Leah had a habit that some people would kind of poke fun at, but I think it makes sense. Regardless of who won HOH, immediately after, once she could get them alone, she was having a conversation with the HOH before anyone possibly could every single time. And so I'm imagining there were probably situations where she could have presented that. Imagine her saying that to Cam. Okay, not that Cam ever would have won, but that's besides the point.
Right. No, I get what you mean, for sure.
I would like to see that attempted because I wonder.
It would. I honestly, if I were in the Big Brother house, that would be a really appealing argument to me. I agree. Want to keep people in the house that I can manipulate or play with as much as I need to. I don't want strong people in the house. So my cat is hi. So ultimately, Hardy chooses Will and Kent to go up, and he doesn't want Will to go home. This is a pawn situation. It's a very emotional nominations because you could tell he respects both of them so much. It's what the events that play after nominations that I find really interesting. There's a few house dynamics that are forming, and the most notable one is Will and Nicole. So up until this point, they kind of loosely played together. It was a little bit of a cat and mouse situation, but once he made that final 3 with Hardy and Nicole, he and Nicole were getting a lot closer, and they got real close. The flirting was a lot. He started flirting with her, and at one point he was showering and she was like, I'm going to play chicken with him and I'm going to get in the shower with him and see how far we can take it. Mind you, Nicole is very married, and we discussed that in the first episode because of the banner planes. So for those listening and watching, this is the context of that banner plane that we're starting to see, is that they're sleeping in bed together, they're cuddling, they're being very flirtatious. She opens up the shower while he's completely naked. Their diary rooms are about each other. They are forming not only an alliance, but a very clear situationship, situation mance. I don't know what to call it. And Will just keeps saying to her, I know you're in love with me. And this is the same week where they are in the hot tub together, and they don't show much on the actual show. They just show them flirting. But according to live feeders, Nicole, and again, this is alleged, but Nicole was using her feet strategically in the hot tub
The entire transcript, for better or for worse, of the live feed events of that evening are out there on the internet. If you are interested for whatever reason, they exist.
I'll also post them on our Instagram page that I'm going to be making. So if you want to follow us on Instagram, just look up Who Pushed Helen Pod. Who Pushed Helen POD. And yeah, that's a good idea. I'll post that because it's quite a read. It reads like fan fiction, honestly.
It really does.
It really reads like enemies to lovers, you know? Like, oh, there's only one hot tub and there's two of us. Like
one bed at the intro. Oh no.
Exactly. That's exactly what it's giving. And if I were married to Nicole, I would also send a banner plane to be like, knock it off. He is way too beautiful.
Well, my thing is too, and I mentioned this in the first episode, is her husband had been sending banner planes all season, like encouraging ones. He'd been doing it a ton of times. So she had to know he was watching the live feeds, right? Like, it's not like, oh, maybe he's just watching the episodes and they won't edit this into the episodes. You know your husband is paying attention to the feeds and you just don't care, which is wild.
You know, I have to wonder if sometimes they just forget that they're being recorded. Like, at this point, it's like 45 days into this situation. Like, I have to imagine at some point you forget the cameras are there, at least a little bit. Or you just, like you said, assume they're not going to show it on the show and that they're just not going to be able to watch the live.
That happens a lot. That happens a lot in modern era Big Brother. The more and more there's more recruits, they don't have an understanding of what the live feeds fully are, which I think is wild. But they're like, oh yeah, like they're only on sometimes, right? Not quite.
No, and we see that get people in trouble all the time. And I think also with Big Brother 2 specifically, they don't necessarily like know how many people are talking online about it, like how things are being recorded and shared and transcripts are out there. You know, to them, this is a quick 20-second situation. They have no idea it's blasted everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's wild. But this week, people start crumbling a lot more under the pressure. And most notably is probably Monica. So this week, and I am so pro Monica on this right now.
I am too.
I want to put my full chest out there to say that. Monica is not having it this week. She's been talking game with Krista and Nicole all week. She's exhausted. She's sleeping. And it sounds like it was early morning. And Nicole and Krista were conversing over who to send out. And Monica wakes up and is like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, we talk about this all day. I haven't had my cigarette. I haven't had my tea. I haven't done anything yet. And you guys want to yap at me already? Like, basically, can you give me a fucking minute, you know?
It was so real.
So real. But the funniest part is that while she's like having this like moment of being like, I'm exhausted, like we're here constantly, stop talking, and like literally while that's happening, Kent comes up and is like, hey, can you guys do me a favor and be really nice to Bunky today and like, you know, say good morning? And that pissed her off even more. Like, she's like, are you kidding me? I can't get a goddamn minute to myself without y'all getting into my fucking face. And like, whew, it was that to me, that scene, that entire scene of her arguing with Nicole and Krista, then her like, and Kent going back and forth is like, that is old school Big Brother.
Exactly.
Like, just arguing with them because you're tired and you're around people constantly. There's no real game involved in it. You're just annoyed. Like that's like the good. Those are the good fights. You know?
Yep.
That's like classic. So moving on with this week, something that Big Brother 2 does, and they don't have a formal name for it, but it's like this little house meeting that happens the day before eviction night. And it seems like that's when they start to talk more of their eviction speeches. And I think it's probably because of time purposes, like eviction nights are still kind of live. And so they don't want speeches to run too long and things like that. But before every eviction night, they have this little meeting in the living room where people get to discuss why they should stay. And Kent is, you know, next one on the block, and he says to everyone, he's like, this is Will and Hardy's game. If you continue on, like, you're going to be next, then you, and he's dead on about all of it. He's dead on about the alliances that are being made. He's dead on about this being a numbers game, and that, like, if he, Bunky, Nicole, and Krista joined forces, they could just get out Hardy and Dr. Will no matter what happens. And I was really impressed. And Dr. Will in his diary room was like, that dude has a perfect read on the house. He's like,
Kent is really on track with this. You know, I don't like the guy. I think he's a snake and I think he's gross, but the guy really knows what's happening in this house.
Like, you could just tell they see him as such a country like bumpkin. But what I find really funny about the scene, and this is going to be one of the scenes I'm going to actually put on here, is that during this week, Kent has decided to quit smoking because he ran out of cigarettes. And so in every single scene of the week, you see him with like a sucker in his mouth. So during this moment, he and Hardy get into a huge argument where Hardy is basically like, who are you to say that kind of thing to me? Like, you're the one who tried to team up with me. Like, they're just going at it. And Kent goes to storm off and he puts like 3 suckers in his mouth as he like storms out. He's like, and I was correct because, like, literally, I made a note of it and everything that, like, every time you see this man, he has a sucker in his mouth and a nicotine patch. You could see a sucker and a nicotine patch.
Poor guy was going through it.
He put like 3 or 4 of those things in his mouth as he's like storming off, and I was like, imagine trying to quit smoking while you're actively fighting for $500,000 and your biggest competition looks like fucking Superman.
Who was? I'm trying to think. The most Derek F smoked. Correct, in Big Brother 23. Have we had any smokers since then?
I thought you weren't allowed to smoke in the Big Brother house anymore.
Big D smoked. I'm 87% sure in 23, but I don't. Maybe it's not allowed anymore. I would just not be casting smokers. Like, of all your options, I just think that the amount of logistical like effort that you would have to go through to make things work for them now in the modern era, like they probably just try not to cast people who smoke.
Yeah, whereas like early seasons of Big Brother, like 99% of them smoke, and like actually if you don't smoke, you're like missing a lot of gameplay.
Right.
Which is like part of why Chilltown and earlier in the season, because they're like the only ones who didn't smoke cigarettes, were getting annoyed because they didn't want to have to sit around secondhand smoke in order to like play the game of Big Brother.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I mean, I get that. I don't think they had to make it everybody's problem. That's like your personal choice, unfortunately.
Right.
But it does, add more to that. Ending off this week is one of my favorite things, and that is one of Will Kirby's infamous lies. But this lie actually, I honestly think this lie is what made him win the game. And basically what he did, this is so funny, is he went up to Nicole and said that Monica, Krista, and Hardy have been secretly communicating through playing cards. And he basically says to Nicole, like, yeah, Monica told me that they choose who they're going to vote out based on the playing cards. Like, they're using them like tarot. And then they've learned to communicate via playing cards.
Krista said that her, Hardy, and Monica have had an unspoken pact. Hardy and Monica and her sit down, take the cards, and flip one over as to who's leaving. And that's how they vote without talking about it.
That's why she's been looking at those cards all day.
Right.
The more extravagant lie you tell, the more people believe it.
Why do you think she's looking at those cards alone? You think she's playing solitaire with 12 cards?
I throw out about 100 to 150 lies a day, and maybe 2 or 3 stick. I really made it up, and my favorite part about it is everyone believes it. Pretty good, right?
And the worst part about it is when Kent tried to tell you that Hardy and Krista are in cahoots, he was right.
Is that where Yellow Jackets got the idea? I'm a little afraid now.
Right.
I just caught up to Yellow Jackets last night. Like, now I'm caught up to the live episodes. But like, I started watching like 3 weeks ago. But that's hilarious. Also, I wonder if that is why they're not allowed to have cards anymore.
Possibly, because Nicole eats this up and adds on to the conspiracy theory. Like, she's like, oh yeah, she was playing solitaire the other day, and I thought it was like weird how like few cards she had like playing solitaire. And Dr. Will's like, see, yeah, like who needs 12 cards? Like, and I was like, this is an insane lie. But it added just enough doubt in Nicole to be more loyal to Dr. Will than Hardy. Because that's what he was trying to do. At this point, Dr. Will realized, like, Hardy is HOH. But after you do nominations, you don't have any power anymore. So he can run his mouth about Hardy all he wants and plant all these seeds and tell all these lies because Hardy can't put him up on the block. It's already done.
What's going to happen to him? There's no
He's already up. People already want, Kent out. So it's like he's sowing the seeds for the next HOH and the one after to go after Hardy, which I think is really interesting because we're watching Hardy become more and more loyal to Dr. Will. And as he goes up, Dr. Will's loyalty to him continues into a free fall. And again, with timing, we're seeing that he's utilizing these fractures and making them bigger. And they ate it up completely.
And I think this is when Will starts to realize he's in his bag. Like, he sees how well this is working, and he recognizes that he has the power of persuasion that works so well with this group. And I think you're right. Like, I think this is really kind of the moment for him where it becomes a game-winning situation, and he takes it and runs with it.
Once he figured out how to divide Nicole and Hardy, I think he had this game won. I think that was like a checkmate moment, because Hardy honestly is nothing without Nicole, and Nicole's nothing without Hardy. They've been playing the game together the entire time. They're their own voting block, essentially. The way he was able to plant that much distrust over a complete bullshit lie after he had spent the entire week making sure she knew he thought she was beautiful and smart and funny. Like, he buttered her up all week so that she would trust what he had to say. It's messed up.
Yep.
But it's good gameplay. And then lastly, before Kent does unfortunately get kicked to the curb, we have the famous moment of Dr. Will on eviction night singing "I Will Survive" to Julie Chen.
At first I was afraid. I was petrified. I kept thinking I could never live without
Gloria
you by
Gaynor.
my side.
That's another show. That's another show, Will. But also on this now.
And I grew strong. And I learned how to get along.
And they would never let them do that now, right? Because of songs.
No, I doubt it. I had to imagine that the rules were the same then, and that's why he did it during like a live show, because she does try to get him to stop. She's like, haha, that's enough, you know.
That makes sense.
But yeah, that took place during that week, and let's do a quick synopsis here. Let's see where everyone's at. So, all of the alliances are dead. Will is now in several alliances. He has taken Hardy's place pretty much with Nicole and Krista and Monica. He like booted Hardy right out of that, made final threes with them. This is when he pretty much figured out you can just make final threes with everyone, and as long as you never win an HOH, you never have to break your promise. Therefore, everyone's going to stay loyal to you to the end, which is ultimately what does happen. And this week was definitely the catalyst for that. So are we ready to move on to week 6?
I believe so.
Week 6 is dumb to me. I'm sorry. I don't think there could have been worse nominations, personally. So Nicole is HOH, but really Dr. Will is HOH. This is a weird... I understand Nicole was in a hard situation, because at this point the people left are all people she's somewhat aligned with, right? She and Hardy have always been aligned. She and Will are newly aligned, and she has a great relationship with Krista and Monica. I believe the obvious nominations for her game should have been Bunky and Will. It was not that.
No.
Will had convinced her through that lie. You remember the lie of Krista, Monica, and Hardy all communicate through playing cards to put up Krista and Monica on the block, which I think this move is what ultimately led to her losing the game, personally. She did not practice any jury management during this. She was very combative towards two people who were two of her most loyal allies for the majority of the season, and she had her conversation with Monica gave me goosebumps, because she's being all like combative, and she's like, you guys are a voting block, you know you're best friends, like basically like, fuck you, I don't care what you say, I'm gonna nominate you. And Monica says,
the black girl is not gonna win. That's it.
Okay.
That's how I feel, the way I feel.
Right.
And I get it, and I understand
I
it.
respect that you feel that way. That's fine.
Yeah. The gay guy and the black girl. That's how I feel.
Okay.
I'm not surprised. The good thing is we talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. There's nothing else I got to talk about.
damn, that is really hard watching back now, knowing that even after this moment, it takes like 23 years before
I forgot she said that, but I remember now, and it's crazy, and this will probably be next episode that we talk about, but I think if she was there in the end, she would have won. And
I agree.
Crazy. It's just crazy how it all plays out towards the end of that season.
I fully agree. I think if Monica or if Krista did not go out this week, Monica would have won Big Brother. I really do. But she was weakened too much. And of course, we'll get into like the external factors that happen later, because as we know, this is the only season of Big Brother that takes place before 9/11 and after 9/11. And we'll talk a lot about that the next episode, I'm sure. But until then, this is a lot of infighting, and Krista and Monica are no longer speaking to Will because they don't know completely about the lie, but they know that Will talked to Nicole and made her not trust them. And so they stopped talking to Will, and they were making like a big deal out of it, just typical I'm on the block and I'm pissed about it, like kind of mentalities. And Will pivots again and has a conversation with Krista that was basically like, Nicole's crazy, man. She's jealous. I don't know. I'm vibing. I don't even know what's going on in this house.
The gaslighting is crazy.
Oh my God. And it works so well.
He was so good at it.
But also, like, I wanted to say, so not much really happens this week because Monica and Krista basically say they're not going to campaign against each other. Everyone's just mostly talking about who's the biggest threat. Pretty early on in the week, everyone was like, Krista's the biggest threat. Monica is a lot more like trustworthy. So not a whole lot happens this week. There's really not a whole lot to talk about, but there is one thing I want to mention, and that is, and this is going to come to no surprise, the hypocrisy of watching Mike Boogie and Dr. Will use flirting as like a huge strategy to get to the end. Like Dr. Will got all these women's trust because he's flirting with them. He's making them feel nice. You know what I mean? But when a woman does it, like Janelle or Nicole Franzel or anyone else who like has that like reputation, I guess, they get chewed up over it. They're like, oh. Or Allison from season 4 is the perfect example of that, And I'm watching BB2 being like,
Yeah.
I feel like all of these women just take everything he says as true because he's so beautiful and he's like working the charm. He's flirting. He's making them think that like something could happen. And it's possible that stuff did happen. And that's really what the highlight of this week was watching Will flirt the women against each other, which is kind of always annoying to watch. Truly. So towards the end here, we have one more week. And it's a fake week because due to Justin being expelled so early on in the season, Big Brother was like, no HOH, none of that this week. Which, we all love those weeks. But I will say, at least it was better than Zombie Week.
Yes. Yeah,
Zombie Week, it really did halt the game completely. But in this week, instead of doing an HOH, they did that food competition that turned everyone against each other.
More of those, please.
I didn't think we were going to ever talk about food comps on here because I don't love them. But this food comp was unhinged.
This specifically, yeah. Give me this instead of Janky Week. Like, just give me the most unhinged possible food challenge. This was like the precursor for like the really unhinged, like Pandora's box, which I still think we should do more. But this specifically, because everybody is involved versus like Pandora's box is one person. But I want them to do this.
Because this lasted an entire episode and I was glued the entire time. Like I didn't even notice that we didn't do an HOH and that nobody was on the block. So let's paint a picture for those listening and watching. So back in the day, Big Brother used to do food competitions in order to get food in the house. It wasn't always that they just got a bunch of groceries all the time. They usually had to like win privileges and things like that. And instead of have-nots, they had a thing where if you lose the food comp, you have to eat peanut butter and jelly for the entire week, which I'm sorry, they all bitch about it so hard in Big Brother 2.
And I don't think that's bad at all.
Me neither. I would take that over slop any day.
Oh, for sure.
Any day. But to them, it's like life ruining. Like, but they're allowed to like do them up. They can fry them. They can like do a bunch of, anyways, I digress. But throughout the entire season, it's been a very big deal. Like Hardy and Bunky literally got into a screaming match about this. Well, Hardy screamed at Bunky because Bunky was like, the women keep losing these food comps and are forced to eat peanut butter and jelly. We should throw a food comp. And Hardy was like, absolutely not. Like, no, I need my fuel. I will not concede, which I don't blame him. I would have been the same way.
He said, I will never be competing on Survivor. Thank you very much.
There you go. So anyways, during this week of like no evictions, Big Brother plays a food comp where they had to all run around the house and look for a jar of peanut butter. Once you had your jar of peanut butter, you like return to your seat, okay? And then they call them individually into the DR, and they basically say, hey, we're going to give you $2,500 if you agree that you and the rest of the house will eat peanut butter and jelly for the next, let's say, 6 days. And then they say, no, not a good deal. That's not a good deal. All right. Then Big Brother says, okay, we'll give you $5,000 to eat peanut butter and jelly for 4 days. And they can either say, yeah, that's good. No, that's not. The final offer is $7,500 for 3 days of peanut butter and jelly. Okay. One by one, they're doing this. Monica, unwaveringly no. She's like, absolutely not. I fucking hate eating peanut butter and jelly. It's all I've eaten like all goddamn summer.
That's what I was gonna say. I think it depends on too, like how many times you've had that as your punishment, and versus like if you've only done it once or you haven't done it at all, like 3 days is fine.
Yeah, exactly. So, but she was like, absolutely not. Nicole, absolutely not. She did like think about it more, but she was an absolutely not. And then Will, shockingly, also declined, but his reasoning was, look, I've been in hot water with these house guests like all season. I'm not gonna put a spotlight on me when I'm doing like really good right now.
And I think it would undermine the group mentality if I was to take it. So once again, I'm going to deny that offer.
Yeah.
Very smart. Bunky and Hardy were the two that made the deal. Bunky made it for $5,000 for 4 days, and Hardy made the deal for $7,500 for 3 days. Now, whoever has the lower number on their peanut butter jar wins the money. And so I think it's really interesting, one, to watch the bargaining happening, because it felt a lot like Survivor, where like you can bargain with Jeff and make deals. I really liked that aspect of it. But I also love that the way they told the person like who the winner was they called and each person had to answer the phone, like individually. And then Julie Chen would be like, you did not win. Do you understand this? And they're like, yes. And then when Bunky answered, she's like, did you have the lowest number on the peanut butter jar? And he was like, yes. And she was like, congratulations, you won. Do you understand this? And he's like, yes.
I guess the most dramatic thing that's ever happened to them.
Literally. But the politics after, and this is one of those things where we're talking timing is a good idea, is that Will knew the second he was in that diary room how this was going to play out.
Yep.
He knew to make sure he didn't take the money, but he also knew to get everyone to turn on whomever did. Regardless of who it was, that was his plan. And so after this comp, Will leads the charges and is just like, hey, let's all agree that whoever took the money, we're not going to vote for them in the end. Like, let's all agree on that right now. I was like, oh my God. And yeah, so immediately infighting starts happening. Hardy admits, like, he's like, look, I did take the offer, but I didn't win the money.
Which, why would you say that?
I don't know. And then because he said that, Bunky outed himself as well. And it was like, if I were in that house and I was either of them, I would have blamed this entirely on Dr. Will. That's exactly what I would have done. I would have been like, you guys, why are we even debating this? This guy doesn't care. He talks about how indifferent he is. He says he only cares about money. It's obviously Dr. Will. He's the one who made us fast. He's the one who, there was just such an easy opening. But because of that 1 week that Will was able to align with Hardy was never going to go after him again.
Crazy.
Like, how did he create this loyalty? Because he was the easy one to blame for this. But he was the only one in the house like comfortable with lying, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree.
Crazy. Also, would you have taken the deal?
No, and I think that is why they haven't done something like this in the modern era, because they would have to increase the amount of money so much. Like $5,000 in the Yankee swap for veto, sure, but to inflict some kind of punishment on the house, like it would have to be upwards of 10K, I think, for them to ever even sniff anyone getting to say yes. I don't think I would have, purely because I'm there to win, and if I'm going to win the money anyways.
Yeah, so. I would have definitely taken it. The $7,500, I absolutely, for 3 days of peanut butter and jelly, absolutely. But I also would have had no problem lying about it. Like,
right.
The way I see Big Brother is that it doesn't count if you lie. It's like a game.
Exactly.
It's the same like when you're playing Uno and you hold your cards like this so that nobody can see how many cards you have left.
Yep.
That's the same with Big Brother. I would have taken that $7,500 and I would have been so happy eating my peanut butter and jelly, and I would have been like, damn, Will, you're an asshole for doing this. It was clearly you. I mean, there just would have been no question. But that's what's interesting about watching earlier seasons of Big Brother, especially in this case, is that I feel like that kind of thing now would play out so differently. But how easy it was to divide that house over anything is wild. These bitches ain't loyal.
No, it was so simple.
But that ends the mid-season mark, the last 4 weeks, and then next up we'll do the finale of this, which has just we have so many very interesting things coming up, including the house guests learning about September 11th in real time and possibly being some of the only people in the United States to not know what happened.
When you talk about the social experiment aspect of Big Brother, I think Big Brother 2 is the perfect example because of things like that.
Oh my God, you just reminded me of something that's so important, and I'm so glad that just reminded me. When Nicole was HOH, she told Krista that she's not there for the money and that she's there for the social experiment. And like Krista, like in her DR was like, that makes me like want her to win less. Like, I'm here for the fucking money. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, that's crazy work.
That's honestly one of my biggest pet peeves is when people on reality shows are like, I don't need the money, or like, I'm not here for the money. It's like, then leave.
I agree. I agree 100%. Give me more contestants on competition reality shows that are there to win the prize that they're competing for.
You know, I said as much during BB 26 because I'm not someone who absolutely like hates recruits by any means. I just feel like if you're gonna get recruits, I'd rather them be people who like aren't already like really wealthy. And I said as much, and then someone was like, are you trying to create a Hunger Games? Like, you just want to throw a bunch of poor people in a house and extort them and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what are you talking about?
Also, like, if you feel that strongly about it, that's basically what it is already.
That's like, literally what it is.
Maybe it's just not the show for you. I don't, maybe.
Big Brother 2 through like 10, that's the clientele they had. Was like people, like at least the majority of people like, needed it, like bad. But I thought that was funny. I was like, so what's the solution here? Like, poor people are not allowed to win money on TV?
Right. I think the way you're presenting it is actually so much worse, but sure.
Right. I feel like and they're like, and how do you expect people to save up for it? It's like, well, I would love Big Brother to pay them in real time and not wait until, because they get $1,000 a week, and they wouldn't have to save up to go on Big Brother if Big Brother paid them like through their bank account every week that they're in the house.
Yeah.
Then they're actively getting paid for being there. And then whomever's helping with the bills on the outside can take that money. Like, and use it for that. It's a really simple solution. I'm not saying we have to get like a bunch of unhomed people and like make them wrestle for money. Like, what are you talking about?
Also, like, it's voluntary. They're here for fun. It's okay. Like, no one's being drafted off to war.
Right. But yeah, great middle of the season. I had a really good time, and I'm even more excited about the end of the season. Because it's not only good, but then that means we get to start season 3.
Yep. Yeah. I think the middle of the season is so fun. It is really the first time in Big Brother history, that we start to see the game really take shape. And that sets the tone for everything moving forward. So the midsection of the season is fun for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's end it here then. For everyone listening, please listen to the next one. We're going to finish up season 2. I have a little game that I want to play with Emily in the next episode, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And remember to follow us on TikTok. I am at Ghostbuster Sammy, and Emily is at Emily Watches TV. And as always, keep listening.